Please join me in welcoming a leader who is looking out for your tax dollars in Washington, Congressman Marsha Blackburn.
Thank you. What an absolute treat to be with you all today, and I have just loved every minute of this. And being able to be here and hearing Rebecca's speech at lunch, I mean, what a trooper. And then listening to the business panel, Amy and Cleta I love how Cleta says, I'm just a lawyer, just an election lawyer, don't you? Understated. And Ursula listening to all of those stories. What fun is that? I just absolutely loved it. And I think that we can all agree that listening to what you had to say and what we know and what we read about Claire Booth Luce, we know that she was a get-it-done woman. And sometimes I'll say, you know, in D.C., maybe we've gotten a little bit too much of the good old boys. Maybe it's time for the great new gals. And I think she would be the great new gal emeritus, don't you? And would probably relish the title. Well, and let me tell you, a place where we need some of this get-her-done sort of spirit is when it comes to the federal budget. I got to tell you, it doesn't matter where I go. I meet people that are just down in the dumps. You know, the bad news that we're hearing is absolutely breathtaking. It is just breathtaking. And so people are constantly saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to get this country back on track? Is there any way we are ever going to be able to come back from all of this? And I will tell you, I imagine that many of you are like me. You put your head on the pillow at night, and the thing that is really frightening to you is, in the crevice of your mind, there is this fear that our nation will cease to be what our nation has been. And you don't want to let your mind go there because it is such a debilitating thought to you. And you think, surely there has got to be a better way. And indeed, I think there is. But just, I want to spend a few minutes with you as you get ready to go out and take a leadership role in turning this country around and give you some of the tools to use and kind of build a foundation of understanding where we are, what we can do about it, and where we need to go. Now, think about it like this. If you go back to 2009, if you just look at the poverty rates, we had 43.2 million people who were in poverty when President Obama was sworn in. Today, we've got 46.5 million people. We've lost 6 million jobs. Think about those numbers. Household income has gone from $52,195 down to $50,054. Now, look at that spread. You've seen household income drop that much. And when you're working on a monthly budget, that's a lot of gap that you are having to fill. As one of my constituents keeps saying every time I see him, he says, Marsha, I got too much month left at the end of my money. You need to be doing something. And there are people that think about that. Electric power. Have you looked at what you're paying per kilowatt hour? On average, electric power has gone up 20%. Gallon of gas has doubled. Has doubled since the president was sworn in. Now, these are all kind of what you would call your fixed cost. Oh, we didn't even talk about health care, did we? Oh, yeah, that thing called Obamacare. What has happened there? Households are paying about $2,500 more for their health insurance than they were when the president was sworn in. No, we haven't been to the grocery store yet either, have we? Everything on the grocery store shelf has gone up because logistics cost more, plastic that it is put in costs more, processing is costing more. So your food costs have gone up. And oh yeah, we forgot about that thing called the debt. Our federal debt has gone from $10.6 trillion up to $16.2 trillion. And so all of these worries cause us to fear that our nation is not going to be what it has been. And I know you're like me. You want us to continue to be that shining city, that place of freedom that Noni talked about. You want us to be the land where we revere faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. And in order for us to do that, we have to solve these problems that are in front of us. I will tell you, quite frankly, I think that what we see happening is capping our children's future, and we're trading it to the people that own our debt. And it is all because people in Washington are refusing to deal with the federal budget. They're refusing to deal with the impact of what is happening in our government. We're seeing it with religious freedom, which is coming under attack by expansive and ever-reaching, overarching government. Financial reforms, we talked about the financial issues and what had happened with Mellon Bank and getting into, you're seeing institutionalize the concepts of too big to fail. When you talk about the increasing cost of food and electricity, what is the one federal agency that kind of finds itself at the center of that? The EPA. The EPA, with all of its environmental protections that they are trying to spew out. But the regulations that are just infiltrating and permeating every single corner of our lives. And it is driving up the cost of government. It's driving up our debt. It's driving down our take-home pay. It's driving up the cost of what you're paying at the pump, what you're paying every time you flip on the light switch. And there is no end in sight. Last year alone, the federal government issued over 4,000 new regulations with over 80,000 pages of instruction. One of my constituents said, that's more than the King James Bible. I said, yeah, and it'll take you more than a year to read it, too. But you've got 80,000 pages of instruction, and guess how many people now work for our federal regulatory agencies? Just the regulatory agencies, 291,000. So they are spreading their wings. Of course, the IRS has continued to grow, but even at that, the cost of federal regulation is more than twice what the IRS collects in federal income taxes every year. Federal regulation is costing us $1.75 trillion every single year. So it is something that we are going to have to deal with, because on top of all of this regulation and the stats I've just given you, the cost of Obamacare, anybody remember what Obamacare was supposed to cost us when they rolled it out? It was to cost us less than $1 trillion. They were going to be able to do all of this for, Cleta, what was it, $876 billion or something right about there? It's already up to $2.6 trillion. And we haven't even implemented the program. We haven't punched the go button on it. So we are going to have to put our focus, shift our focus. Those of us as conservatives, the time has come that we have to shift our focus and say, what are we going to do to save the American dream? One of the things that it is going to require is having people that believe in the American dream. And having those individuals in the House, in the Senate, in the White House, having those leaders that can tell their story, like those that have stood before you this weekend and have told their story, where they've come from, what they've done. People that understand the American dream, that believe in the American dream, have lived the American dream. I'm one of those people that has been fortunate to do it. Growing up in the Deep South, being able to go to college on a 4-H club scholarship, knocking on doors, selling books door to door during the summertime, and learning how to build those relationships and organizations, and then hanging out the shingle to start my business, building all those relationships that Lisa talked about that are so important to a business. All of that is what embodies the American dream. And then when you get to Washington, when you get to City Hall, when you get to the State House, you need to be putting all of those lessons to work so that you're bringing those skills to bear that you've learned in the private sector, bringing those to bear in the public sector. Now, as I said, there are some things that you're going to see, those of us who are elected, the Republicans in Congress, the conservatives in Congress, begin to shift the focus on. Number one is going to be the deficit and the debt. We cannot continue to run trillion-dollar deficits every single year, because that goes over on top of this debt. If we stay on the path that we are on right now, in 10 years, we're going to have $26 trillion worth of debt. And it's just more debt than we can even possibly afford. And getting this fiscal house in order is an imperative. Congress is going to have to start doing what every family and every small business does, and that is sit down, make out a spending plan, and then stick to it. We've had some fun with this in Congress this year. We have, because we know that we have to get to the nuts and bolts of it. And as you all are aware, every year the House has passed a budget, and what happens when it goes to the Senate? Nothing. We're at day 1,380 since the U.S. Senate took up a budget. Is there any organization or business that could run without a budget and run for that period of time? We send bills over to the Senate, and what do they say? Don't send us the bill, send more money. So that's why we passed the no budget, no pay bill. And we decided we were going to change how things make sense of every dollar that we spend. So this is why it is the imperative that we get that under control. You know, Admiral Mullen said on July 6, 2010, that the greatest threat to our nation's sovereignty is our nation's debt. And the reason is this: if you take just China, with the interest that we are paying China every single day on the debt that they hold, every week they can go buy 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 joint strike fighters. 3. And that's not all, kind of like the ShamWow salesman here. That's not all. At the end of the year, guess what? They've got enough money left to go buy an aircraft carrier to put all these joint strike fighters on. So this is why it is such a threat. You know, when I was growing up down in South Mississippi, I loved going to work with my dad, and we would be going on Highway 84 East, and we would pass this old used car lot. And I wanted to tell Rebecca, along with newscasters and politicians, used car salesmen, that would be, they're kind of down there in that top 10 of least trusted. But we would pass this used car lot. And this used car lot had a plywood sign out in front of it. Now, I promise you, this sign withstood every high wind, every tornado, everything that came through Laurel, Mississippi. And somehow, the raggedy paint stayed on this sign. And it had the name of the car lot, and then below it, it had the words, "We tote the note." We tote the note. And I would ask my dad, you're laughing, you know what toting the note means. I would ask my dad, I would say, "Daddy, what does it mean when they say, we're going to tote the note?" Well, he would explain to me, people would get in a pinch, they wouldn't have the money, so they would just have to go find somebody who could tote the note, carry the note so they could buy this car. So the big advertising for this used car lot was that they toted the note. And he would always say, "Now, baby, let me tell you, don't you ever let anybody tote your note." Well, I got to tell you, the United States of America today has China, Japan, OPEC, Brazil, and the Caribbean banking centers toting our note. Because if you were a business and you went to the bank with a balance sheet like we have, they would tell you there was no money. If you went in there and you said, "I've got to have some more," and they said, "Well, you're borrowing 46 cents of every dollar," they would say, "No money." That is why we passed no budget, no pay. That is why we have said we're not going to raise the debt limit unless we continue to see these spending cuts and reduce what the federal government spends. And I mean cuts. What you're going to see is we bring the budget forward this year. I want you to be looking for spending cuts. I want you to be looking for discretionary spending cuts because they're going to be there. I want you to be looking for reforms in Medicare and in Social Security, things that are going to stabilize those systems, because individuals have seen the federal government have first right of refusal on their paycheck all their working lives. And those are earned benefits. So you're going to see us tackle that. And most importantly, for all of you who are yet to start your careers, what you're going to see us do is to bring forward a budget that is going to balance in 10 years. And yes, it's going to be painful. And yes, it requires a spending plan. And yes, we did pass a bill this week that requires the president to tell us when his budget is going to pass, when his budget is going to balance, because we want him to tell us if he ever plans for the budget to balance. He's missed his deadline 4 out of 5 years. He's never sent us a budget that would balance. And if it's going to be 40 years from now, we think the American people deserve it's going to be 40 years from now. Now, the important thing in all of this, we know what the problems are. You know what we're going to do about it in Congress. Where do you come in? When my mom... Every time, my mother has been active in Republican women all of her life, and every time somebody would start to get upset about something and throw something at the TV, Mother would say, "Well, just rave on, rave on." Raving on, railing, throwing things at the TV is not going to solve the problem. Whining isn't going to solve the problem. I tell my 3-year-old grandson all the time when he puckers up and starts to whine, I'll say, "Chase, what does whining get us?" And he'll say, "Nothing." And that's exactly what it gets us, nothing. But what is going to get us somewhere is you. The Y-O-U, you and your circle of friends. In order to be a leader, you don't need a title. You don't need to be elected. What you need is information, knowledge, and the will to get a job done. Margaret Thatcher always said, if you want something said, ask a man. If you want it done, ask a woman. And you can go back and go to the Bible and read about Deborah and read about Esther. Go read about Deborah Champion during the Revolutionary War. Women have always stood up to save their nation. Always. Always. And that is what we're going to see happen now. And it is going to be you and your circle of friends. Go to my website, blackburn.house.gov. It's Marsha Blackburn on Facebook, at Marsha Blackburn on Twitter. Be informed. Forward things. I have an entire budget school on there that explains the federal budget, that shows what's going to happen with this debt, that shows the real debt. If we were using accounting tools like a corporation, we'd be at $99 trillion in debt. That's our unfunded liabilities. But get your friends engaged, because it's not me and my generation. We're not the ones that are going to end up paying the bills. It is going to be you and your children that are going to be paying the bills. Because you've got too many people in Washington that are too self-centered and too self-focused and too concerned about the next election, not the next 2 generations. And they continue to allow people to tote the note. Some of us have said, it's time to stop kicking the can. I said, give me that can. That can is marked spending cuts. And that is what we have to do to right-size the government so that our government is smart, so that our government honors the constitutional duties that we are sworn to uphold, so that our government is strong and sovereign. And that requires that we remember that economic freedom and political freedom are linked. I love that Sam Adams quote. It doesn't take a majority, but rather an irate, tireless minority to build brush fires in people's minds. The American people know that the debt and the spending is the problem. They just don't know exactly what to do about it. You all have the ability to start changing that, to be certain that they know where to go to find the information to do something about this. Because at the end of the day, the prize is freedom, and freedom is always worth fighting for. Thank you for letting me be here with you today.